I wished I saw a werewolf. I have a really short Dogman story for you. I was riding in the back seat of my family's car, and we were going on a trip to visit a relative in the country. During this trip, I wished I could see a Dogman. I stared out the window and wished, and no matter how hard I wished, I still didn't see one. So I gave up and sort of zoned out. I tried counting the light poles as we drove past, then I lost count and went into a sort of a light trance. When all of a sudden, bam, there was the Dogman. He was coming up a hill toward the road as I saw him. Then I turned and looked out the back window as he continued walking right across the highway behind us. I saw him walk across the grass in the middle, then across the southbound road, which had no traffic at that point. From there, he walked off into the woods. It was a very canine-like Dogman with dog-like legs, high standing ears like Anubis, and darkly colored fur. I pointed and shouted the entire time, but nobody looked, and they all told me to be quiet. So I was the only one that saw the werewolf, or Dogman, crossing the road. I swear this is true, and it happened on Interstate 95, heading north of Stony Creek and south of Carson in Virginia. Dogman on a country lane. Ever since my parents let me watch their old VHS tape of The Legend of Boggy Creek when I was 7 years old, I started having a recurring nightmare. It would start off happy and nice. I'd be walking along this road in the country with some friends. It was different each time as to who was around me, but it was the same location. I didn't recognize where I was, but it always felt familiar, like I had been there before. The dream would stretch on and on, with us walking and joking around on a sunny afternoon. We would pass a baseball field on the right and keep going. There were houses here and there, and then we'd pass this building that I called the barn on the left. I called it that because it looked like a barn, but I think it was being used for some other purpose. Maybe it actually used to be a barn. After we'd passed the barn, the mood would start to shift. It wouldn't feel fun anymore. It would feel this way that I had never felt in waking life. It was scary, but a kind of scary that I didn't have a name for. It was terrifying because we knew that we were being watched by someone or something that we couldn't see. It's not a comfortable feeling. Even the first time I had the dream, I could sense that something had changed. Something had somehow gone wrong. When we got to an area with a sort of a clearing on both sides of the road, we knew that whatever was watching us was doing so from the woods immediately past this field on my right. It was maybe 100 feet away, hidden in the trees. If we went any further, we'd be putting our lives in danger. And yet, we knew that we had to go in that direction. We had no choice. We either got past whoever or whatever was making us feel so frightened, or else else we would die in the trying. There was no other possibility. And so, each time I turned to whichever friends I had with me in that version of the dream, and we all charged forward. And each time, out of the forest would leap something I would have to call a monster. It was not a Dogman in spite of the title of this story. It was more of an ape man or a caveman, maybe a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. It moved faster and more insanely than anything I'd ever seen in real life, and it was impossibly immense. I mean, maybe 18 or 20 feet tall, just a savage killing machine. Have you ever seen a video of a goat acting really crazy? If not, you should search for funny goat videos on YouTube. Although you'll laugh, you'll likely also get a bit creeped out, because goats are extremely weird. That's why people associate them with the devil. Well, this ape-like man in my dream would make sounds and gestures like the craziest of goats. Its tongue was out and flapping all around, and I can't begin to explain how scary it was to see and hear. This thing might possibly do anything. Every time the dream would lead to me racing through the woods trying to get away from the giant crazy Bigfoot. And every single time, it would end with the huge Sasquatch grabbing me by one ankle or the other and pulling me back to it. I would wake up screaming, falling out of my bed, and it never got any easier to deal with. It was just as terrible every single time. Not just for me, but also for my parents, who felt vaguely guilty about the whole thing. One year, we went to stay for the Halloween weekend with some cousins of ours out in Pennsylvania. The name of the town they lived in back then was Effort, Pennsylvania. I thought that was a funny name then, and I still do today. So one day I was walking with my cousins this long walk to a lake or something, I forget. I was walking with them, letting them lead the way, and not really paying attention until we came upon a baseball field to our right. It looked just like in my dream. I thought about saying something, but it didn't seem like a big enough coincidence to mention. And besides, I was out there to help me get past my nightmares, not to keep talking about them. So I bit my tongue, and on we walked. Then, as you might have already guessed, I saw it off in the distance. No, not the monster. I saw the barn. It was ahead of us on the left. I started feeling kind of sick, and I didn't want to go on, but I couldn't think of a way to tell the others without them thinking I was out of my head. I asked them what the name of the street we were on was. It was Gilbert Road. You can look it up on a map, Gilbert Road in Effort, Pennsylvania. Then we got to the area with a clearing on either side of the road, and my cousins stopped. One of them asked me if I felt something weird. I was amazed he sensed it too. Then I remembered, in my dream, someone else always noticed we were being watched when we got to that clearing. I agreed with him, and I suggested we turn back. I was informed loudly and rudely that turning back was not an option. They hadn't showed me the place they wanted to show me yet. My youngest cousin said it was probably a raccoon or something, and he took a rock and threw it directly at the patch of woods that the Sasquatch monster always hid in every time in my dream. And then something from inside those woods screamed. I begged my cousins to run away, but they ran forward, excited that whatever they hit was something larger than a raccoon. Now I was the one thinking that they were insane. Suddenly, something emerged from the woods and with only 1 or 2 steps was directly in the middle of the road. It turned and glared at us, and I saw, in its entirety, from head to foot, something that looked nothing like the monster from my dreams. Yes, it was hairy. Yes, it stood like a man. But no, that was nothing like a caveman or Bigfoot standing there. That was a dog-headed creature. We were looking at some kind of wild werewolf. This was the Dogman of Pennsylvania. My heart was beating so fast I thought it was going to explode out of my chest. I took in the creature, aware that it might be the last thing I ever saw. The hair was gray in the sunlight. It was the same color all over. Its ears stood up on its head and came to points. I don't remember anything about its eyes. It held its paws in front of it the way a dog does when begging. I don't remember if there was anything unusual about the front claws. It looked like a long-haired dog or wolf, but it stood on its hind legs as though that were its normal way to travel. I could hear it growling even at that distance. I was so sad. I really didn't want to die. But now my dream had come to life, sort of, and that dream always ended exactly the same way. Then, without any warning at all, the Dogman sprinted off to our left, making it across the overgrown field and back into the forest so quickly, all I really saw after the first step was a blur. "He's as scared of us as we are of him," said my youngest cousin, and his older brother rapped him on the forehead in response. "That thing ain't afraid of nothing, you dimwit. We were just wasting his time, that's all." Then we walked on to wherever they were taking me, and everything was normal the rest of the day. And the rest of the night, too. I never had that dream ever again. And I also never agreed to go walking with those cousins ever again either. As far as I'm concerned, one time is more than enough times to encounter a Dogman on a country road. I used to know this guy from Norway who would change into a werewolf on Wednesdays. He didn't call himself a werewolf, he had some other name for it that wasn't in English. But he looked like a werewolf to me, so that's what I called him. He was the Wednesday werewolf. This was a pretty strange guy. I met him in school, but it wasn't until after we both graduated and I was over his place one day when it dawned on me I had never seen anyone else over his place. He told me he didn't have many friends because he was a werewolf, and that cracked me up. But he invited me to stay the next Wednesday night if I wanted to see for myself. Idiotically, I agreed, not realizing that when he was a werewolf, he no longer behaved like a human being. So it happened around dusk. He told me sometimes on overcast Wednesdays he would be a werewolf all day. Sometimes he would just be hairier on those days. I didn't believe anything he said until I actually saw him start to change. It wasn't like in the movies where parts of his body started reshaping with bones crunching or whatever. He just laid back in this easy chair he had, and each time I looked at him, I noticed he was a little less like himself and a little more like a monster of some sort. By the time the transformation was done, he was covered in dark gray fur, and his body was shaped differently than before. His clothes were gone, but I never noticed when that happened. He appeared to be sleeping, then suddenly opened his eyes and he looked totally different. I told him how amazing that was and thanked him for letting me see, but he gave me this look back of major hatred, like absolute dislike. It scared me and sent a shiver through me. I backed away from him, and I told him to stop scaring me, that it wasn't funny. He slowly stood up, and now I could hear him growling, just like an animal. I asked a little more forcefully that he please cut it out, but instead he shoved the easy chair he had been sitting in straight into the wall. It made a big crashing noise and I was completely shaken up now. I took off toward his kitchen and ran out the door there into his backyard. I scaled the fence there, which was only like 4 feet tall, and I ran down the block toward my place, which was 2 or 3 blocks away. Even after I got home, I could still hear him howling. We live in a fairly urban area, but it might as well have been the jungle that night. I was so paranoid. I turned off all my lights and drew all the curtains closed. I hoped that if he came by, he would think I wasn't at home and keep going. The next morning, there were a bunch of texts from my friend making fun of me for being such a chicken. He said I should have seen the look on my face when he started growling. I still don't see what's so funny about that. He invites me over on Wednesdays still to this day, even though I moved out of that neighborhood last year. He tells me there's nothing bad about being a werewolf, that it's just his way of paying tribute to the god that Wednesday was named after, or some kind of thing like that. But I don't trust him. In fact, I won't even hang with him on Tuesdays or Thursdays, just to be safe. I wouldn't believe this story if I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes, but that crazy Norway dude is seriously the Wednesday werewolf. I scared a real Dogman. Dear Scary Stories, I have a story that I hope you use. It's about the time I saw Dogman and scared him off. It happened by the garbage cans I have on the side of my house. One night, I was taking out the garbage, and as I went around the corner, there was a very tall man with scraggly, nasty-looking, dark fur all over, and he was going through my garbage. When I saw him, I dropped what I was carrying and screamed like a little girl. I was never so surprised or scared in my life. Something about my reaction totally freaked out the Dogman, who squealed a high-pitched screech in return. It was sort of like if you accidentally step on a dog's tail, that sort of sound. That Dogman's eyes were so wide, I could see the whites around them. He turned and ran on his hind legs for the first few steps, then on all fours as it leaped over my fence and ran loudly up the gravel driveway of my neighbor's property until he was out of sight. My wife came running out, panicked, asking me what had just happened. I told her I saw a real-life Dogman. She asked me what happened then, so I told her the truth. It took one look at me, screamed, and ran off into the woods. She couldn't stop laughing. I still don't know if she even believes me, but it's now a running joke how I need plastic surgery or a fashion makeover. She tells her friends that her husband is so scary looking, he even scares off werewolves. So, thanks, Dogman. If I can ever repay the favor, just let me know.
If you want a coloring book full of monstrous delight, then give this a look. It'll give you a fright, right? Scary stories, coloring book, werewolf coloring book. And just to make your mind explode, it's a digital download. All it costs is $2.09, and then you will be feeling fine. Coloring monsters today, hey, it's a coloring book, hooray. Okay, link is in the description.
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.